Thoughts, Action, Success. I'm Kirsty Johnston, and I'm all about helping you get out of your own head and taking action in your life. As a mindset performance coach, I'm focused on helping you improve your mindset, reduce stresses, and create the confidence you need to up-level your life. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to a term called Imposter Syndrome. We'll delve into the following in regards to this: what it is, what the symptoms are, why it affects so many people, who it affects, and ultimately how it actually shows up and affects them. So let's get started. Although it's not an official health condition, imposter syndrome is an experience many will have. As well, it can lead to or be associated with feelings of anxiety, depression, stress, and other mental health conditions. If you're listening to this episode of Thoughts, Action, Success, chances are you've had your own run-in with imposter syndrome. You might recognise it as being a sensation of being a fraud, an imposter, or it's as if you've somehow tricked people into believing you're something you're not. This feeling can really be uncomfortable, overwhelming, or self-sabotaging, especially if you're not clear as to what it is or where it's coming from. So the reality is, imposter syndrome can strike anyone. Further, it doesn't necessarily mean you're incapable of tricking anyone or that you were chosen by mistake if this is in relation to your career or a promotion. Instead, it's more to do with how you view yourself and how you feel in relation to the people around you or the attention you're receiving from them. In my Inner Critic to Inner Coach program, I explore this phenomenon at a real deeper level. Together we will uncover what it is, where it comes from, why it strikes, and how it really impacts people. We'll also explore different techniques you can use to overcome imposter syndrome and feel more confident and secure in your life and achievements. Whether this is a new experience for you or it's one that you've struggled with frequently throughout your life, there is a way to overcome it and recover from the jarring symptoms it creates. By the time you finish the 6-week program, you'll have all the tools you need to overcome it for good. There is one caveat, however. Many people come under the belief that if they know better, they'll do better. Have you heard this saying before? Perhaps it's true in some scenarios, but I've discovered that is not always the case. When it comes to matters concerning your mind and the thoughts and emotions you're experiencing, knowing better is not always the answer. The key is that knowledge is only power when it's applied. That means that in addition to joining my Inner Critic to Inner Coach program, you must also commit to applying the techniques that we discuss. And we need to do that consistently in order to see real changes in your imposter syndrome. The more you repeat these tools in different scenarios that trigger imposter syndrome for you, the stronger they become. Thus, the more effective they are at defeating imposter syndrome and creating a sensation of calm, peace, and real confidence. If you're ready to learn how and apply the techniques you've learned consistently until you get desired results, then an Inner Critic to Inner Coach program would be a perfect fit for you. But for now, let's dig in with a deep dive into actually what imposter syndrome really is. Imposter syndrome is termed as a phenomenon that creates a disturbing mental experience for people who have it. While it's not an official medical condition or mental health concern, it's attached to real feelings that can be overwhelming and sometimes even unbearable for people experiencing it. So what are the symptoms of imposter syndrome? It's said to be more likely to arise in perfectionists or those that are high achievers. Women are more likely to experience it than men. What it strikes is the person who generally feels a sense of self-doubt, and then it can be either mildly or incredibly crippling. That self-doubt can really create thoughts like, maybe you've said to yourself, they've mischaracterized me. I don't deserve this. They think I'm better than I am. I'm going to ruin this. What if I'm not capable of meeting their expectations? What if I got to do this and I forget everything and they think I'm a fraud? What if they made a mistake picking me? Someone else would have been better at this. My results were based on luck. I don't deserve this and I can't replicate it. This mental chatter can be really distressing, particularly if you're attached to the experience that is triggering for you. For example, maybe you took on recently some new responsibilities in your career, and so therefore you might be feeling imposter syndrome in this relation to this. While you likely have the exact skills to thrive with these new responsibilities, it might feel like you don't. And then the self doubt begins to convince you that there's been a mistake, that you've made a mistake, that you shouldn't have taken it on. Another common symptom of imposter syndrome that I find is called what I call the imposter cycle. So in this cycle, you frantically plan and do everything you can to avoid making any mistakes. Or otherwise, the other side of it is that you procrastinate and then you do the frantic last minute planning and preparation for the event, which also triggers imposter syndrome. Then when it's over, you feel great, you experience a rush of excitement and this relief. Then another event arises that triggers your imposter syndrome, and you go around in this cycle all over again. So why do we experience imposter syndrome? Where does all this come from? So all of these symptoms of imposter syndrome are believed to be caused by the individual having, so it's for having exceedingly high expectations of themselves. And then combine this with a strong fear of failing or letting anyone down. People pleasing, maybe a term you've heard of. Not surprisingly, people who deal with imposter syndrome frequently report coming from a family who valued success and punished or frowned upon failure. So, but not all individuals come from this background. However, yet many individuals claim to have a similar feeling of pressure and overwhelm stemming from society and expectations that they feel was put on them. And many individuals imposter syndrome is experienced because they feel that if they could do things perfectly or near perfectly, they would be liked more. That's this people pleasing thing coming out again. They might think this is where the ultimate praise and validation comes from and believe that unless they can reach that, they're not worthy or they're valuable. So this unfortunate belief can really create anxiety, depression, and imposter syndrome in the individual struggling with it. It can also lead to people trying exceedingly hard to live up to these astronomical expectations that they put on themselves and always feeling like real success is just beyond where they can reach. So then this cycle, it becomes exhausting and is entirely unsustainable. So breaking free from it and creating more realistic expectations for yourself is so essential if you want to recover from it. So how does imposter syndrome actually affect you in your life? So if you struggle with imposter syndrome, the chances are you experience it in many areas of your life. Well, it might be most prominent in one particular area, maybe shows up in your career. If you look at the overall life, you're likely to notice it in other areas too. So I want to share with you some examples of how imposter syndrome can affect the different areas of your life. You might be able to relate to these. And then I want you to note which ones stand out for you. In my Inner Critic to Inner Coach program, I share how to apply the tools to each area of your life being affected so you can completely recover from this painful, sabotaging belief set. In a professional scenario, imposter syndrome can negatively impact your professional life by causing you to believe that your success is the result of luck rather than skill. It can really lead to you to feeling like Alicia, one of my clients, who was recently promoted to partner at a law firm. The thought of trying to prove herself worthy of the title, it led her to an over-investing in different projects to ensure nothing went wrong. Despite being completely worthy of the promotion and capable of the work that she was taking on and all it entailed, she really began to underestimate the value she brought to her firm. So then the experience resulted in leaving her feeling crippled with anxiety and seeking support to overcome what she quickly identified as being, and we worked together to identify it as imposter syndrome. Fortunately, she did recognise it well before it developed into burnout, which is one of the side effects of it, because she's experienced the same symptom years earlier when she was studying law, when she was at university. In terms of your relationships, Imposter syndrome can lead you to feeling unprepared, unworthy, and doubtful. In the case of Ryan, he was a newlywed when he started to begin experiencing imposter syndrome. For him, it felt like a fear that his new wife would realise he wasn't that great guy and would ultimately leave him. Then, when they had their first baby, the imposter syndrome became so bad that he actually began looking for reasons to leave. Finally, his wife confronted him about his behaviour. She said he'd been doing too much and that whenever she tried to connect with him, he would become closed off. And then Ryan admitted that he was trying to make up for something. He felt like he was being a poor husband and father, and then he was afraid of her realising this and leaving him. When they sat down and talked about it, and she explained that no, she didn't feel that way at all and had no intention of leaving. He was a fantastic husband and a fantastic father. And then he realised, oops, it was imposter syndrome. And he sought the help to move past it and to get the tools. Lastly, imposter syndrome can really have a negative impact on your personal self-image. When you frequently succumb to the negative symptoms of your imposter syndrome, you're more likely to get trapped in cycles where you feel worthless, hopeless, and helpless. You might start out small or hardly noticeable at first, but over time it becomes substantial and can really create a serious issue with your self-image. A poor self-image can then lead to low self-esteem and low self-confidence. It then results in you inserting yourself into low quality or toxic circumstances, both professionally and socially. And so recovering from imposter syndrome can really help you change the narrative of your life and help you enjoy a healthier self-image and healthier relationships and career as a result. So the key points that I've shared in this episode of Thoughts, Action, Success is that imposter syndrome is not an official mental health diagnosis, but it is an incredibly challenging phenomenon to experience all the same. My 6-week coaching program, Inner Critic to Inner Coach, will mean that I'll open up my toolbox and share with you ways to cope with or recover from it. So to recap, so far, you know what imposter syndrome is, what the symptoms are, why it affects people, who it affects, and how it affects them. By now, you've likely identified imposter syndrome in yourself and are ready to take the next steps to overcome it for good. If you'd like to find out more about my Inner Critic to Inner Coach program, then drop me a message and I will be in touch and we can jump on a call and talk about it further. Until our next episode, thank you for watching or listening. Thoughts Action.